Today on the Big Six in 60, the Chargers hire Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator.
I think everybody is very excited about what this offense is going to look like.
Number 1 Arizona holds off number 13 BYU.
Boy, what an atmosphere it was. It was so loud.
And Luka drops 46 points on the Bulls in Chicago.
He throttled the Bulls for 46 points.
This is the Big Six in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big Six in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big Six in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Chargers hired former Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel Monday, adding a familiar name to work with Justin Herbert on Jim Harbaugh's staff. Locked On Chargers host Daniel Wade and David Drogmeyer look at the new offense.
Contrary to popular belief, the Chargers can have nice things, and Mike McDaniel has officially become the offensive coordinator of your Chargers, which is fantastic news, and I think everybody is very excited about what this offense is going to look like. And in other great news, on the other side of the ball, the Chargers learned their lesson and they wasted no time locking up one of their best interior defensive linemen. Teair Tart is here for another 3 years. And the Chargers also brought in 3 different internal candidates for defensive coordinator interviews.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 of them were kind of wild cards that we didn't see coming, so I'm excited to get into that. But the good news about today is we figured out the formula. All we have to do is, say we're going to do a buy or sell show, or say we're going to do some sort of fan show, and some gigantic news will get in the way of that. And I mean, we had multiple big news drops today, but the biggest one being that, our other show yesterday was ruined by the fact that, of course, after we said, why are we still waiting for Mike McDaniel officially signs to be the Los Angeles Chargers offensive coordinator. And it's great, One thing we talked about before is Jim Harbaugh and, Mike McDaniel and their personalities clashing. Not as much with Mike McDaniel with this stellar social media team the Chargers have. And I mean, I love the way that they did it, just having him, come there. Is it going to be anything about vaping? Like, I know how you guys roll. Awesome. Super excited. And I think that's the thing now, is like now you get to be excited. Before you had to temper your excitement a little bit. We all kind of got drugged through all the different things that happened over this last week, but you can all now take a sigh of relief just because the Chargers have officially locked up the best offensive mind on the market.
Yeah, I felt like you were getting strung along a little bit, right? It felt like, you got really excited that, hey, this was going to happen. Like, the reports are out there. Everybody's saying the same thing. It's got to be true. And then, oh, by the way, he still wants to interview for head coaching opportunities. And if he gets one, he's going to take it. And, of course, like that just heightened the level of hysteria across the Chargers fan base, us included, me a little bit more so than Daniel. But I think it's just one of those situations where you just wanted it to be over. You wanted it to be officially signed, sealed, delivered, done. There's absolutely nothing that can happen. No other teams can swoop in and take him away because you know what this means. You know what this is going to mean for Justin Herbert, for the Chargers offense. You are going to have somebody who's at the cutting edge of innovation of offensive football, and he's going to be calling plays for your quarterback.
100%. It's just nice now. No caveats, no hedged bets, no, mixed reporting. I mean, man, we're talking about Ian Rappaport saying on Sunday that Mike McDaniel is still in the mix for the Raiders job. And I guarantee nothing happened between then and when he signed the dotted line, right? It was just so much. And people kind of feeding off the fear mongering going on in the Chargers fan base and kind of preying on it to a certain extent.
There was a lot
all we
of it.
wanted to see is, hey, tell me the good news. Tell me it's official. And now, I mean, when it's all said and done, after all the talk, after all the chatter, he didn't even ever go and interview anywhere else for a head coaching position. He never did, right? Until Albert Breer put out that he felt, off about it, interviewing for the Bills job after he had already basically told the Chargers he'd be taking the offensive coordinator role. But it's great. I mean, they got kind of a unicorn, a proven, experienced play caller that wasn't fired because of his lack of ability or creativity offensively, more fired because the team kind of crumbled around him. And I mean, his $250 million quarterback in South Beach crumbled as well, right? And all of that happened there. So I think one thing that, me and you talked about, before the show that you brought up was a great point, which is just that the Chargers in the AFC West are going up against legends, right? We'll see who the Raiders head coach is going to be, and it's not going to be a legend, but it could be a very talented offensive mind like a Clint Kubiak for sure.
Yeah.
And you're already in there with Andy Reid, and you're already in there with Sean Payton. And during Herbert's career, whenever he's gone up against those guys, you've known the kind of deficit that you're facing from one sideline to another. And I think that is one of the great parts about this move is, yes, this isn't the legend that Andy Reid is. This isn't the legend that Sean Payton is for sure, but you're getting somebody on that level. You're getting somebody who has led the league offensively while being the play caller, and that is something that makes you feel much better about going up against those other guys now.
No question about it. I think before Jim Harbaugh got here and was the head coach of the Chargers, you felt like you were going into pretty much any matchup that you had with a coaching disadvantage. Now Jim Harbaugh's in place, you feel like, okay, we have one of the top 10 coaches in the NFL, bar none. This guy knows how to coach. We know it. He's a winner. It's guaranteed. It's not really up for debate. Offensively, the last few years with Greg Roman, just flat out felt like you were in a disadvantage in almost every single matchup. And a lot of those matchups, you just felt like you weren't with a play caller, with a guy that can scheme guys open, that can adjust on the fly and be able to make do with what you had to the maximum level, to be able to maximize. Like we saw Jesse Minter maximize guys on the defensive side and get the absolute most out of all of those guys. Yeah. And even with all of the support that they gave to Greg Roman, they weren't able to produce anywhere close to that same level of result. And I think with Mike McDaniel, you know now that you have a play caller, a schemer, a offensive mind that is going to get the absolute most out of Justin Herbert, out of these offensive weapons, put them in positions to really have success and access parts of the field that he hasn't been able to with his previous quarterback. Justin Herbert's going to be able to do all of that, and you feel like with him now leading the offense that you're going to have a guy that's going to be able to give you that schematic advantage.
Yeah, at least get you somewhere way closer, right? And I mean, the one difference, or one of the differences between, him, Mike McDaniel being and Andy Reid and Sean Payton is those guys had Hall of Fame quarterbacks, right? It's hard to say Mike McDaniel has had that at all in his time in San Francisco or in Miami. And not to say that Justin Herbert is a Hall of Fame quarterback, because he's far from that at this point. But he's as talented as those guys had, Andy Reid and Sean Payton, when they kind of made their names for themselves. And I think it's just also time to kind of get excited about what this Frankenstein's monster is going to be. The mix of the McDaniels and the Harbaugh philosophies coming together. And I think obviously the big one thing for them both is being able to run the ball and run the ball effectively. And they're always going to agree on that. But now the question becomes, who does he bring along with him? Because the Chargers only have one real opening on offense right now, and that's the offensive line coach. But as Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz told us in their end-of-season press conference, they're open to letting their offensive coordinator pick some of the staff, and now we kind of wait to see where that shuffling goes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we know that the Chargers wide receivers have seen some growth under Sanjay Lal, but I don't know if there's any relationships there with Mike McDaniel. So we could see a new wide receiver coach. Obviously, we know we're going to see a new offensive line coach, tight ends coach, right? We don't know if there's going to be a new one there. So we need to know, and we also know now, obviously, with hindsight being 2020, that it's very important to get coaches that can help decipher the offense or defense and be able to help break that down at the individual level so that everybody is on the same page and everyone's reading off the same sheet of music.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, there's arguments, hey, do you keep some of the guys because it is going to be a true mix of philosophies and you want to have guys that can kind of help you bridge the gap there. But in reality, what you want are guys who are going to be able to install Mike McDaniel's offense the correct way and be able to do that as quickly as possible to try to kind of mitigate what comes along with getting a new offensive coordinator and changing what your offense is going to be in one off season. So hard to imagine all the guys they have there are the perfect fit for that. We know that they like Nick Hardwick. There's a reason they held on to him. But just because those other guys are still employed doesn't necessarily mean they will be. So now we kind of wait and see who he wants to bring along. We've obviously talked about Frank Smith. And he was interviewing for the Eagles offensive coordinator job, so we'll see what happens with that as the offensive line coach. Shane Day does have experience on the same staff as Mike McDaniel when they were together in San Francisco, so there are some ties there. He could still be there.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The Kansas City Chiefs will go back to an old friend as OC after missing the playoffs this season. KC brought back Eric Bieniemy to run the offense after he held the position for 2 Super Bowl runs before. Locked On Chiefs breaks down the hire.
One of the things that we do know right now is that Eric Bieniemy is the new offensive coordinator for Kansas City. Obviously, Ryan and I have been talking about this for the past week. Not a lot of new information about him being there. But the thing that Andy Reid did say that I thought was really interesting when he talked about in his press conference was, well, there were several things. First, there were other people they talked to. There were other offensive coordinator or potential offensive coordinators that they reached out to and they had interviews with. This tells you exactly kind of what we thought happened. A lot of people seem to think that they just hired Eric Bieniemy. They didn't do any kind of other search. This was their guy all along. That doesn't seem to be the case. The Chiefs are notorious for not allowing information to leak out. And so this does not surprise me that you find out from Reid himself that they did try to talk to some other people about being their offensive coordinator. But obviously it didn't go that direction. And now you're in a situation where you have Eric Bieniemy as your offensive coordinator. And it's going to be an interesting thing to see if they make any changes from what has been going on in Kansas City the past couple of seasons with Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator, if there's going to be any more coaching changes. Reid didn't mince his words. He did say that he believes Matt Nagy deserves to be a head coach and that he hopes he gets a head coaching job. At this point, it doesn't look like that is going to be a reality for Matt Nagy this year. It's possible there's still some job openings out there, but I wouldn't imagine that he ends up getting a head coaching job this year. I would imagine he ends up going and getting a offensive coordinator job at some point this offseason. But there's a key there in that thought process. Kansas City was moving on from Matt Nagy, and maybe it was Matt Nagy that was moving on from Kansas City regardless. There's a little bit of conflicting reports there. It sounds like there are reports coming from Nagy's team, or at least that's where it would appear to be coming from, that Nagy was going to be taking an offensive coordinator job elsewhere so he could get more recognition and, call plays and do different things that he's not really able to do under Andy Reid, because Reid calls most of the plays for the Chiefs. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I do think he ends up getting a job this season, but he wasn't coming back to Kansas City. But the interesting thing that Reid did say was when he talked about Bieniemy, he said, Eric has learned several different things from the different places he's been. Now, one of the things that Reid did say was that with Eric Bieniemy going to multiple different places, he's been to UCLA, he's been with the Commanders, he's been with the Chicago Bears. He is seeing different things that he hadn't seen when he was in Kansas City the last time. So he has gotten more information from different coaching staffs, different philosophies, different ways of playing football, different ways of playing offense, and maybe even a little bit more information on, different ways that they attack offenses. Defensively, they attack offenses, because as an offensive coordinator, as a running back coach, or any kind of coach in the NFL, you need to be looking at it from both sides of the ball, your positional grouping. Regardless, how do you defend specific things is going to play into the offensive coordinator role as well. So it's interesting because Reid did get into the fact that there's possibilities that he's going to allow Bieniemy to call some plays. He didn't get into specifics as to certain situations, but he did say that there could be some situations where he allows him to make some play calls. That doesn't seem to be the case with Matt Nagy. That doesn't seem to be the same thing that happened with Matt Nagy. And I think that that's a huge key here. The question I'm going to have, and that we're not going to see until we actually get into the season and see how things progress, is are we going to get any indication as to who is making the play calls in certain situations? Because it's always going to look like it's going to be Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy is going to be calling the plays to Patrick Mahomes, but he's probably getting them from Andy Reid for the most part. Are we going to find out situations specifically that Eric Bieniemy takes over and calls plays versus when Andy Reid is going to be calling the plays? I don't know that we will find that out. We may not. But it's interesting that he does say that in his press conference because it's not something that he has normally done. He hasn't really given them the opportunity to call plays. He's generally the one that does that, and he likes doing it. So this is a little bit of a departure from what Reid has done in the past. You have to wonder if how that's going to play out in the near future, because obviously if he's willing to make that change, what else is he going to be looking at changing? Still have a lot of questions as to how this is going to play out with the Chiefs in multiple different areas. You still have a running back coach position open. You have some offensive assistant position coaches open. You have to wonder if they're going to be making any other moves over the next couple of weeks with the coaching staff. We don't know right now. Nothing else has been announced, but I would imagine that we will be getting information over the next couple of weeks as to who will fill out this coaching staff and whether or not you will still see guys like Andy Heck back and Tom Melvin, which I would expect Melvin's back. Not sure on Heck. We'll see. Lots of different reports out there that the Chiefs are thinking that he could retire or that maybe he is going to retire, but it's just conflicting information at this point.
The number 1 Arizona Wildcats remained undefeated last night by beating number 13 BYU in one of the better games of the college basketball season. Locked On Wildcats host Leif Thulin has the recap live from the arena.
What a game it was. I am live on site at the Marriott Center, home of the BYU Cougars, and boy, what an atmosphere it was. It was so loud. Every shot that BYU scored, deafening. Arizona, when they scored to end runs, a pin could drop. You could hear the gasp of these deflated BYU fans, and what a sweet, sweet sound that was, seeing Arizona survive a litany of difficult calls, a litany of fortuitous bounces for BYU. And Arizona, the better team throughout, steady, egalitarian in their attack, powerful, rim-oriented, defeated team that did hit over 10 threes, that did score 20-plus from their star. But Arizona made it brutally difficult for A.J. Debonsa. A.J. Debonsa struggled. The box score will say 24 points. The box score will tell you that BYU competed and this game was close. The reality is Arizona dominated from the get-go. It took them a couple minutes to get into this game. It took them a couple minutes to find their rhythm. And eventually, they closed the half strong, winning the first half 44-31, relying on what they do best. Getting to the rim, shooting twos, high percentage baskets against a team forced to shoot difficult shots. Arizona closed on a 12-2 run to that first half, and they did so despite A.J. Debonsa drawing so many fouls. And Koa Pete with 2, Mo Krivas with 2, Tobe Awaka with 2. Frustration strewn across the face of those guys who are doing their best to avoid fouling. It was a very clear discussion for Arizona at halftime. Do not foul. Do not give them any buckets that stop the clock. And Arizona was able to survive all of those things and win this game. But the survival, I don't want to be the story. The survival, I think, is going to be talked about like, oh, BYU pushed Arizona to the brink. And in a way, they did. They had a chance to win the game at the final possession. But with Arizona, a team was a pick them off before the Arizona dominated this game statistically. The reason this was a survival, and I will never, and I make this to anyone who knows me, I will never, ever be someone that says the refs won a team a game or lost a team again. However, the refs allowed for BYU to stay alive in this game. You saw calls like Karchenkov got stripped, but he was mauled, and then it led to a flagrant foul on Burries that kept Arizona from winning this game at that moment. Then you saw an offensive foul on Bradley in which he was held prior to him shoving off. I will never be someone to say that Arizona was robbed because of a ref. This is about as close as I will come ever to saying that, because the inconsistency with which A.J. DiBonsa was refereed and everyone else was very apparent. But I don't want to talk about the refs. I want to talk about the Arizona Wildcats, who are now 21-0 and clearly the best team in the country. And my graphic on this show says the better team won. I admit I wrote that with like 15 minutes left of real time, about 3 minutes left in the game, and I wrote it out and said, okay, the better team from start to finish wins this game. And Arizona did, so I'm glad I did not put that jinx on. BYU is a good team, but Arizona is the best team. Arizona was, from start to finish, poised, rugged, and together. BYU was living and dying by threes. They made a lot of threes in the second half. Arizona got consistent scoring in a way that they haven't gotten before. Yes, their formula I've talked about ad nauseum. It's point-oriented paints. Pop. You're going to score from the inside the paint. But Arizona didn't score that many from two. From within the paint. Arizona struggled within the paint. They barely won the rebounding total. Arizona had 34 points in the paint as opposed to 26 from BYU. It's because BYU had a concerted effort to make life difficult to get the ball inside to Pete, to make life difficult to get the ball inside to Krivas and Awaka. They weren't allowed to be as great on the glass because the idea was keep guys out of the paint. Keep guys out of the paint and don't let the entries beat them. Don't let Arizona's size and physicality dictate the game. The dictating of the game usually is Arizona high-low entrances. They get easy buckets. Koa Pete had to hit mid-range jump shots. BYU changed how they played and played bigger. Hadim Boop came in early. Mikhailo Boskovic played a ton. Ahmed fouled out, used his fouls. Kebaketa forced on the interior. He got a lot of rebounds late that kept BYU in this game. BYU played a lineup where they had no point guard at one point. It was AJ, Richie, and Moo Davis, who hit a bunch of threes, along with Boop and Boskovic. Like, they played bigger to match Arizona's physicality. Yet still, Arizona has yet to be beaten on the glass. Arizona won narrowly, 39-37, and they had 32 defensive rebounds to just 21. The offensive glass favored BYU tremendously. That is a little concerning, but I'll tell you what the real story of this game is. The story of this game is Arizona and their sustainability scoring the basketball is here to stay. Even without scoring from two in the way that they typically do from 5 feet. They get 45% of their buckets at the rim. 45 from 5 feet and in. And this game, they did not. And yet, without hitting many threes, Arizona hit 4 threes, shooting 33%. So not far below the average and below the average of percentage and output. Yet they still scored 86 points, enough to beat BYU on their home court when there were questionable moments down the stretch and a stalled offense too prematurely. So here is the story. Braden Burries played the best game he has as an Arizona Wildcat in the most hostile environment he's had yet. Braden Burries, 29 points on 13 shots. Jaden Bradley, 10 made shots out of 15 attempts, 26 points, and those guys were the best players on the court. And that included a likely number 1 or number 2 pick in A.J. DiBonsa. A.J., 24 points, 24 shots. That's terrible, and that is a credit to Arizona's defense. He scored those 24 points by making 11 free throws out of 16 attempts. Arizona, I told you guys the strategy I thought Arizona should use is play single coverage on A.J. DiBonsa and do not let Richie Saunders get going. A.J. DiBonsa was able to generate a ton of good looks, and Arizona made a few mishaps at the end of the game where they would double and Kostic hit 2. Davis was spectacular. And in that second half alone, BYU went 10 of 20 from 3. That's more threes than Arizona's conceded in all but 2 games this season in the second half alone. Yet Arizona still led by 13 with just 3 minutes to go. The end of game execution, referees aside, end of game execution needs work. It is not very good, and it hasn't been in the games against Florida, against UConn, and against BYU. But if you can win the minutes for 36 and you're the better team for 36 minutes against a team like BYU, you are going to be great. Arizona won this game for 36 minutes, and they did just enough and came up with one last-ditch stand, connected despite the chaos, despite the variables against them, and dominant for the other 36 minutes. Here's some statistics that are telling. Arizona and points off of turnovers were up 13-2 in the first half. They were beaten like that in the second half, and that was largely at the end of the game. But the difference in this game, Arizona, they only needed 12 points from 3 to score 89. That's 77 points from 2 in the free throw. If you can get 77 from 2 in the throw, 83, every X factor for Arizona it's not. The X factor for Arizona is just playing their game. Like they don't need an X factor. The difference is when Arizona makes over a couple threes, let's say 5 threes. If Arizona makes 6 and above threes, they're going to run the other team out of the gym because they're going to sustainably score 70 plus without 3-pointers made. So it's not can they make threes? It's if Arizona makes threes, they run the team out of the gym. It's not can they make threes? Yes, they can. They do not need to. When they do, it's not close. If they don't, they still win. They scored 2 threes to score 93 against Florida. They scored 4 threes to score 89. And yes, BYU gave a great punch in the final 4 minutes, but for 36 minutes, the best team in the nation imposed their will on a team that decided they were going to play Arizona style, match them size for size, and try to beat them at what Arizona does well. Arizona adjusted, scored in the mid-range rather than the rim, had all-American performances from both of their backcourt members, and Koa Pete, Ivan Karchenkov, those guys did their job. They defended AJ without help and made Richie Saunders' life difficult. BYU has a great player, but they don't have a great team. And Arizona has a great team, and a team is going to beat a great individual.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The Lakers went into Chicago last night, and Luka Doncic led the way with 46 points in a win over the Bulls. The Kamenetsky brothers recap Luka's big night.
Luka putting in a performance as good as any of those star performances on Monday in Chicago. He throttled the Bulls for 46 points on a hyper-efficient 15 of 25, 8 of 14 from three-point range, seven rebounds, 12 assists, only 3 turnovers. And this was, I mean, pretty close to as sublime a Luka game, I think, as you're going to find. A joy to watch from start to finish.
It was part of a night,
by the way, 129-118.
It was part of a night where Luka made some, relatively low key, but still pretty impressive history. He is the fastest Laker to reach 2,000 points as a Laker. It had been George Mikan before, who did it in 72 games. Luka does it in 65. And that is both those guys, by the way, that is stunningly quick work to 2,000 points. And we're going to get into a lot of different elements of Luka's game, but one part of it that really jumped out at me when I was thinking about his box score and thinking about the context of it, he finished the first quarter with 3 turnovers, which is obviously high in one quarter. He ended the game with 3 turnovers, meaning he went the next 3 clean. And between his usage and some of the passes that he threw, which were absolutely insane, just the degree of control that he exercised in this game, there's a lot to compliment with Luka, but that in particular when I really started thinking about it, because in the first quarter, the only thing that jumped out at me as a potential negative with Luka was taking care of the ball. By the end of the game, that was off the list.
Yeah, and Lakers as a team only turned the ball over 6 times in this game. They took excellent care of the ball as a group. So, if you want to keep Chicago, it was a very good offensive team. They do like to get out and run around on the open floor. Every team wants to take advantage of the Lakers in that way. If you only turn the ball over 6 times, you can cover up a lot of sins defensively. Not the Lakers put on a lot of pressure and all of that and forced a lot of turnovers for the Bulls, especially in that first half, as they built up a large lead. But you could just see it. Luka gets this look when he knows he's locked in, and he knows that it doesn't matter what you're going to try to do as a defense. It's not going to work because he can see it coming before you can do it. You try those strong doubles, he can find the open man easily. They do not bother him. You'll see him sometimes back up, as he sort of, to create that space. So now the double's coming super high on the floor, a place where other guards may not want to get trapped. Luka's like, come. Let me create this space because I know I can get a pass to wherever I want on the floor. The shot making was incredibly good. Obviously, the 3-pointer was, certainly on point in this game. It was, from an offensive performance, it was just a genuinely masterful exhibition of controlling a game when you're on the floor.
It was interesting too, because JJ's talked recently, and this was in many ways, it was a conversation about Luka, because Luka, along with LeBron and Austin, when he eventually comes back, they have the ball the most. And he was talking about how the passing or lack thereof on certain nights can affect the overall defense, and just the less the ball moves around, the less the other guys feel engaged defensively and truly.
Absolutely.
But one of the things I noticed tonight, where Luka was on this absolute heater as a distributor, and again, just some of the passes he made in this game were really next level, whether setting up guys for 3-pointers or cross-court passes, or this baseline wraparound that he threw to Vando for a baseline dunk off a dive.
That one was so good. That was so good.
One of the things I noticed is a night like tonight, where Luka was truly just deep in his bag on all counts offensively, it picked up his own energy defensively. Like the third quarter against the Bulls, which was basically the only rough part of this game for the Lakers defensively, Chicago was hitting everything from outside. One of the guys, though, that actually was contesting threes the most during that period was actually Luka. I rewatched part of that third quarter as things were falling apart. And one of the things that jumped out at me was Luka making some of the most consistent effort to get out to those shooters. So it just felt like Luka was just completely energized in putting on a show and wanting to lead this win. And similar to how other guys touching the ball via the pass can raise their own defensive engagement just because they feel more involved, it felt like it raised Luka's own defense as the guy doing the passing.
I think it's just, some of it's just a function of feeling dominant, of being locked in, of, that first half offensively, the Lakers offense was moving and scoring very effectively. LeBron, who finished with 24, had 20 of them in the first half. So he was dominant early. Luka was dominant. Rui got off to a really good start that sustained itself throughout the game. We'll talk about him before we're done. And, that just raises everybody's energy like that. I mentioned before that the Lakers constantly forcing turnovers from Chicago, jumping in passing lanes, knocking, poking the ball away, a lot of really active hands creating easy offense for them the other way. And it's so rare. It seems rare, at least, to have these games where it feels like the Lakers are the team that is generating the easy offense. It is really nice to see, defense turned into offense, breaking up plays, grabbing rebounds, securing the boards, and just making their lives easier to go play on the other end.
Yeah, I mean, look, Chicago is a terrible defense, so it helps the Lakers in terms of generating their own cleaner offense. But I will say they are a good offensive team.
Right.
So what the Lakers did defensively against this team, in that respect, I actually think speaks to something that they were doing well, because while scoring against the Bulls may not be the most impressive feat in the world, holding them down to a reasonable number actually is.
Well, it's scoring, but what I was getting at though is it's scoring. It's not scoring in the half court against the Bulls. It's how much they generated offense off of turnovers, off of busting possessions from a good offensive team to go get points on the other end.
Yeah, and Chicago, they average about 14 turnovers a game. The Lakers turn them over 15 times, so it's basically normal for them, but the Lakers were very good at capitalizing on those turnovers and just putting an already bad defense on its heels. And they scored 23 points off those turnovers, which is a really good night. And the defense for the Lakers, obviously we need to see a longer, more sustained sample size, but it is starting to look, at the very least, more. This is going to sound, I guess it is a backhanded compliment, but I think the audience is going to understand what I mean because they've been watching the opening, 40-ish games. It's becoming competently passable. And if your baseline is competently passable and you can get your offense to where everybody expected it would be for opening this season, and Austin Reeves will certainly help with that when he comes back. If you have a really high-end offense and somewhere between a competently passable and maybe solid plus, and then for like the last 5 minutes of a game, very good defense, you can do something with that. Like, that is a workable formula.
The Lakers, they've got 3 really good players, like really good.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. Number 4 Duke dominated in an ACC matchup against number 20 Louisville last night, winning by more than 30 over the Cardinals for the Blue Devils' best start in more than a decade. Locked On Blue Devils host JJ Jackson goes over the win.
Massive 31-point victory, 83-52, the final score for Duke over Louisville, as we welcome in Kevin Conley. 2 consecutive days that Kev joins us on the show, and another win that we get to break down, Mr. Conley. This is a good feeling. You and I very much so enjoyed this Monday night game.
Yeah, JJ, this is kind of crazy. Like, going into this game, it was like, man, all right, let's see. This should be a premier game in the ACC. And I guess it was for like 16 minutes. You can even push it to like 20 minutes, that it was a good competitive game. But man, that end of the run and that end of first half run for Duke, and they carried it into a great start to the second half. And you look up and they're up by 20 plus points, and you're like, man, how the heck did this happen? The defense, I think, was great. I know we said a couple of games ago against Stanford might have been their best defensive performance of the year. Well, they upped that and then some here against a Louisville team that has a great offense. They can really shoot the ball well from three-point range, and Duke just completely shut them down basically from start to finish.
Yeah, from a makes perspective, the three-point line was kind to the Cardinals, double-digit in makes there, but overall shooting team percentage, as people were loving our quick math that we were having to do on yesterday's show, Kevin, they shot 30% overall as a team. It's really good to see Duke swaying back in the under 40% department. And when you're 10 points better than that at 30% that Louisville shoots for the game, I mean, we'll take that no matter what.
Well, yeah, and even when you boil down to it, you mentioned those 11 made three-pointers. Louisville only made 16 shots in the game. So only 5 two-point field goals the Cardinals made in this game.
That's crazy to think about. What a perspective that is, man.
When you just make 5 two-point field goals, that's insane. I mean, some of these, granted, it's a different level of intensity and atmosphere, but these mid-majors that Duke played made more than 5 two-point field goals in these games. Mikel Brown Jr., terrible. What a terrible. I mean, 1 for 13, was 0 for 8 in the first half. It was his second game back from the injury. So, maybe still getting his legs underneath him and getting that rhythm back of playing basketball. But Duke just did a phenomenal job on him. And then you look at the other side, Ryan Conwell, who Duke did such a great job in the second half in the first matchup against Louisville. He really just has a complete game for the Cardinals, was clearly their best player with 18 of their 52 points. So, Dame Sarr couldn't guard everybody out there, JJ, but when he was on Brown, he certainly did a really good job on him.
Yeah, Sarr straps is taking over once again. And again, I saw this for the first time on J-Man's timeline, so I got to give him credit for that. If we're not printing the shirts already, we need to do something like that, because it's unbelievable to watch this guy really bought in on the defensive end of the floor and totally taking away some of the other team's best players from the action and that sort of thing. Conwell hit one of those threes in the first half that put Louisville up by a single point, their only lead for the entire game. And on the next possession down the floor, Patrick Gongba got an and one. So, I mean, it was just so brief, the one lead that the Cardinals had. For that little moment, it looked like, okay, they're coming back. Duke had as large of a 8-point lead at that point in the first half, and then they started to make a few more shots. But once that happened, like I said, when Gongba got that and one, Duke never looked back.
Well, JJ, I mean, yes, that was a big point in the game, but you look at Louisville after that three-pointer from Ryan Conwell, they'd scored 25 points in just under 16 minutes. Well, in the following 24 minutes and 30 seconds, Louisville scored 27 total points combined in that time. So, again, the defense from Duke was simply incredible. Louisville just had no rhythm whatsoever on the offensive side of the floor, and that's tough to do for a Cardinal team that prides itself on its offense. And you wonder, again, Louisville flew to Durham this Monday morning, the morning of the game. So, how much of a factor did that play? Because typically these teams, fly the day before, they spend the night in the city where they're playing, and then they fly home immediately after the game. But with the bad weather, both in Louisville and in Durham, the fact that ESPN wanted this game to be played, Duke wanted this game to be, everyone wanted this game to be played. And I guess the compromise was Louisville flies on Monday morning to get there safely, because they just weren't able to fly with all the weather on Saturday or on Sunday, and even Saturday after Louisville's game. You would think, could they get out right away? But they opted to stay till Monday, and they did not have a good performance against Duke on Monday night.
No, I don't know that there was anything really that they could do to make them feel a little bit better about the way it went. And, we had that Pat Kelsey discussion a little bit on yesterday's show, that in his first 3 meetings as the Louisville head coach against Duke, he somehow was able to walk into the locker room with the lead and lost every single game by 11. Here's this for a note. Duke is leading at halftime. So we'll throw that out away. And then, like I said, the final result being 11, it happened 3 times previously. 11 times 3 is 33. We had a 31-point victory here. I mean, it was kind of all in one what unfolded in this game inside Cameron Indoor. It took me a while to get to the final point there, Kevin, but man, what a performance there from Duke.
Your math was good though, right? You
Yeah,
did the
well,
quick math,
yeah.
and you were ready to go. Not like me on yesterday's show where you saw the smoke coming out of my ears and my head getting red trying to think of doing all that quick math. But there's a couple of things. I think it became very apparent that Louisville just didn't have the size to match up with Duke inside. And I know we'll get to what Pat Gongba and obviously Cam Boozer did, but specifically Gongba, because if you remember back to that first game against Louisville, he was a non-factor.
He was great.
Yeah, I mean, Pat Gongba was just a non-factor in that game.
Tonight, he was great.
Yeah, those 3 first-half fouls, one coming on the technical,
hook and hold,
I think it was, and he was just completely taken out of the game. In this game, he was great. 15 points, 5 rebounds. Really just was a force inside. And when Duke is rolling with Gongba and Boozer on the inside, it's very difficult, not just for Louisville, but really any team in the ACC to match them down low. And Duke flexed their muscles with those two. And then you add in the fact that I thought Malik Brown, especially on the defensive side of the floor, rebounding, he had the big monster putback dunk, one of his 2 made field goals. I thought Duke's forward group really, really played well in this game.
It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. After a legal dispute with Duke, quarterback Darian Mensah has reached a settlement with the university and is finally free to transfer anywhere he pleases, including the suspected Miami Hurricanes. With speculation pointing Mensah toward the U, Locked On Canes host Alex Dono gets into his recruitment.
The announcement hits this morning, first announced by Darian Mensah's legal representation. Duke also released a statement. They have settled with Darian Mensah. I'm sure there's a big financial component to that, which has not been disclosed, but the settlement has been reached. And most importantly, Bruce, Darian Mensah is now free to transfer and enroll anywhere. I think Duke tried to sneak something in there to bar him from going to another ACC school. That's not in the settlement. He can transfer to Miami, and we expect that to happen anytime now.
Yeah, this is fabulous news, because we just, I thought about this in the last, what has it been, 8 days since we lost to Indiana. And I remember doing the show the next day and saying, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. And here we are 8 days later, I'm thrilled. I kind of it's almost like we didn't lose in a way, because look what's going on. And everybody was saying, we're here. No, we're back. And like I said, I don't care what they call it. We're back because look how relevant we are now. Look where we are in the national spotlight. We're back where we were years ago, every single year. And so here we are. Yeah, it took 24 years to get to this point, but with our schedule, with our coaching staff all coming back except for 1 or 2 guys, and the talent we have in this roster and the talent we brought in the last 8 or 9 days, Alex, it's only January. It's not football time yet, but I can't be any more excited than I am now. This is spectacular what's going to happen from now on. Off-season, the training, we'll talk about guys that need to step up, but this is an exciting time to be a Cane. In 8 days, look what's going on here. And this Mensah kid is spectacular. I think he's as close to Cam Ward as we're going to find.
And, we're only about a month and a half away from spring football. Like, I cannot wait to get out to Green Tree and watch Darian Mensah. Here, let me give you some of the statement that Darian Mensah's legal team put out there. I'll read a couple of excerpts from this. We are honored to represent exceptional athletes, their families, and in this case, it has been our privilege to stand alongside Darian Mensah and those closest to him. Through close collaboration and principled negotiation, we have successfully navigated an unprecedented path, one that has now reached a fair and mutually agreeable resolution. We are pleased to announce that Darian Mensah, supported by our team of legal counsel and Young Money APAA Sports, has reached a settlement agreement with Duke University. So, Bruce, there was a hearing scheduled for Thursday. From where I sit, there were risks for both sides to actually take this through the courts and get to that next hearing, because if either side got an unfavorable ruling from the judge, it could have been disastrous. So, yeah, I've maintained all along that settling this one out of court was the right way to go.
Yeah, it always is, no matter what, whether it's this or a divorce. It's always better to settle if you can, because you can control the terms. Yeah, I heard you say that Duke wanted to slip something in that he couldn't play in any other ACC team for any other ACC team. Never was going to happen. That was a deal breaker. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no.
So they lost him. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know if you know what they are. But you know what? It's not my money, and I don't care. Just get the kid in here, get his wide receiver, get his sister, and let's go, man. Let's just go.
Yeah, I think his sister's a soccer player who's probably going to be at Miami now. And you mentioned the receiver, Cooper Barkate, who was Mensah's top receiver at Duke, 1,100-plus yards, 7 touchdowns this past year. And I went down on some Darian Mensah rabbit holes through highlights and film, and Cooper Barkate was on the receiving end of most of what Darian Mensah was doing this year, and apparently they're coming in together. And, man, Bruce, like I'm thinking about how stacked Miami's wide receiver room is going to be. I mean, adding Vandrevius Jacobs and Cam Vaughn, potentially adding Cooper Barkate. Malachi Toney is here. Joshua Moore is back. Dalen Upshaw is back.
Yep.
You've got multiple true freshmen who I think can play right away, especially Milan Paris and Samorian Wingo, who have been playing on the scout team even during the playoff run because they enrolled early. Yep. And then you got a running back room that's loaded. Like, this may be the best offense we've ever had, including 2024.
Or 2021, when we had Shockey, right?
2001, you mean, not 2020?
Yeah, 2000. Yeah, 2001. We had all those great players. We were too deep everywhere. So they probably had more overall talent, because look what 38 made it to the NFL. But still, this is now as we're doing these shows, now I have to spend the next 6 months talking about the defense. But I think we're okay. The only thing we don't have is these guys have not played as a unit, because you lose Thomas, you lose Scott, you lose Bain, Mesidor, you lose Besaint. That's 5 right there that I could think of. And those are all pretty important parts. Now, from what I understand, Smith may be back.
Chase Smith, yeah, it looks like he's back.
Yeah, now, and he's a hitter, man. He's made some big plays. So we're now it's not so, it doesn't bother me as much. We have to replace and get some linebackers. We're going to be fine. This team's going to be fine. It's hard to believe they won't be preseason in the top 5. I thought about this yesterday too. If Ohio State is ahead of us with all those guys going to the NFL, then it's rigged, because they shouldn't be ranked ahead of us. We beat them. We went to the title game. They're losing 1 million guys to the draft.
Yeah.
But that, I don't really care. Just win. Just win. And you want to talk about the schedule? That schedule.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more on the other side. Hold on. We'll get to the schedule, but I want to talk about what Darian Mensah, the quarterback, can do for this offense, because I honestly, he takes a lot of, I'm not saying he's going to be as good or better than Cam Ward. I mean, maybe he has a chance, but he takes a lot of the best traits of Cam Ward and combines it with some of the best traits of Carson Beck.
That's all for today's Big 6 in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, or on campus going up every weekend, just like we do here. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.